Hello and welcome to the series Exploring Careers in Innovation. This episode is entitled People Attracting and Retaining the Best Possible Talent. My name is Lucas Cappelletti. I'm a current sophomore here at Middlebury, majoring in international politics and economics. Today I'm joined by Pete Steinle, Middlebury class of 1992. During his time on campus, Pete majored in history and was a member of the men's varsity lacrosse team. After graduation, Pete spent a decade at two venture-funded enterprise companies and another 15 years recruiting C-level executives at Kindred Partners. In January, Pete joined Lightspeed Venture Partners, an early-stage venture capital firm in Menlo Park, California, where he works now as an executive talent partner. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Pete.
Hey, Lucas. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So Pete, this series explores a number of different functional areas involved in financing and growing early-stage ventures. So could you tell us a bit about Lightspeed and your current role?
Sure. So Lightspeed is a 20-year-old venture capital firm based in Menlo Park, California. We started as primarily a US-based firm, but now have offices in kind of globally, right? We've got Europe, US, Europe, Israel, China, Indonesia. And so we invest in early stage enterprise technology companies as well as consumer businesses. My role here is I drive our talent initiative and also run our founder success team. So what that means basically means as these early stage businesses continues to grow and scale, they need senior executives that run different functions around the table. My job is to work with our founders and CEOs to ensure that they've got the right team around the table at every stage of the growth, which also includes board members and advisors.
Got it. And so you joined in January. Has there been like an interesting or unexpected aspect of your work, of your job?
Well, COVID certainly has added a huge, a huge challenge. So, yeah, I mean, I think, listen, there's my job is all about getting to know our founders in a way that I can actually help them recruit people to their businesses, and doing that in a remote fashion is a challenge, no question about it. And so, that has been probably the biggest challenge for me, is just to build those personal connections, understand businesses and people well enough to add value in a remote setting.
Got it. And so as an executive talent partner, are you working primarily with the founders of these firms?
Yeah, sure. So if you think about what a venture capital firm does, is we invest money into small companies and provide services and advice to help them grow their businesses. And so, my job is to, in essence, interact with our founder CEOs on a continuous basis to make sure that they've got the right team around them. It also is on a continuous basis to actually meet and engage with some of the best technology talent in the market. And so that's, continually meeting senior executives that are looking for new opportunities. And so most of my time is actually spread between our founder CEOs and executive teams and or senior executives that are actually looking for new opportunities.
Got it. And what are some of the challenges that one might encounter working in an early stage venture?
Well, in general, right, it's a challenge to build a small company. So if you think about, we're investing typically the first money in, so it could be 15 people, first product out the door, dog in the corner, and the goal is to build transformational businesses that are, long-lasting public entities. And so that journey is a challenge, to say the least. And so, just the idea of building and disrupting an industry, hiring the right team, you've got to get a little bit of luck associated with it. But in every stage of the growth of that, there's challenges that are both competition that you're competing against, people that are already involved in the market and installed competitors, and then just execution risk.
So for most of the executives that you're hiring for these early stage startups, are they generally people that you're pulling from other startup companies, or are they, say, someone coming from like an investment bank who has experience working in TMT and technology?
Yeah.
Media telecom?
Most people that that join startup companies, when we're looking to build executive teams, almost all of them have experience building other companies. And so the idea, if we're going to invest in a business and that business needs to hire, let's say, a CEO, or needs to hire a head of marketing or a head of sales, most likely we're looking for somebody that's actually been inside of another venture funded company and been successful. And so there's some proof that that individual understands how to actually build a company. And so besides perhaps a finance role where you could take somebody from, that's been inside of an investment bank and put that individual in a CFO role or a head of finance in an early stage business. But by and large, we're recruiting people at the senior most levels that have experience in that function, in that category. Now, if you're joining a startup company, maybe earlier on in your career, and you're joining from a really good training ground like investment banking or management consulting, I think that that's probably an easier jump than if you're actually trying to make that jump when you're then taking on a C-level position inside of a company.
Do you see, I guess, I mean, like technology in general is something that's ever growing. Do you see like where do you see this, I guess, the space going in the future?
Well, it's everywhere, right? I mean, think about, so 20 or 30 years ago, it would be more semiconductors and then enterprise software and IBM and companies like Oracle and SAP and Salesforce. Technology now means Uber and Lyft. It means any gaming company. It means disrupting the way that you buy food, right? So the way that we think about technology, and I think the way that anybody, is that there's going to be innovation in almost every category of company that's driven by technology. And so the idea that Uber didn't exist or Airbnb didn't exist until the iPhone started, just gives you kind of a window into innovation, then leads to more innovation. And so every time there's leaps in technology, it allows for different business models to be disrupted. And so, way back when it was, again, more enterprise technology and software to, Uber is disrupting the taxi industry and Airbnb, the hotel industry. And so I think there's one constant, and the constant is that innovation will drive disruption, and that disruption will always be opportunities to build great companies.
And do you see a lot of layover in the different companies or crossover in the different companies that you're working with?
There's fundamentally huge difference between an enterprise software company to a social application, to a fintech company, to a healthcare company. So I think industry-wise and category-wise, there really are big differences in what industries are going out and actually disrupting. How those businesses work internally, though, there's more commonality than you would assume. Okay, and so again, the common theme is disruption of bigger industries and incumbents in those industries, and the subject matter that you're actually working on may be a little bit different. The functions inside of those companies, right? Marketing, sales, engineering, finance, are a little bit more closely aligned than you would actually think.
Right. Very interesting. And thank you for those insights there. And so I'm curious to hear a bit about your transition from Middlebury out into the workforce. And was there something specific at Middlebury that drew you into the world of venture capital?
No, there was not. I would say I was introduced to the world of startup companies by actually joining a couple of them. So prior to getting into recruiting, I spent about 12 years inside of 3 early stage software companies. The first 2 I started, I was maybe the 3rd or 4th person hired. And then eventually I joined a company by the name of Salesforce.com, about the 50th employee, and then left after the company had gone public. That business now is about a $220 billion market cap business. And so the idea of being inside of these companies and helping them grow and disrupt industries led me to recruiting, where I spent about 15 years helping to build the executive teams as an executive search professional, then led me to venture capital. So a bit of a long journey.
Yeah, it got you here. And so do you, like, there's always this question, especially in the world of finance, about graduate degrees and, you know, the advanced degree. Is this something that is almost required for venture capital, or at least like for the people that you're working with, whether they be in your capacity or the people that you're hiring to take the lead of these other companies? Do they typically have these graduate degrees, or is it just bachelor degree suffice?
Yeah, it's a good question. So let's just take my role. So as somebody that is, driving the search and the building of teams inside of a venture firm, hasn't been a advanced degree is not necessary. Inside of our companies, it's different functions, right? So think of the executive team being made up as of CEO, head of sales, head of marketing, head of business development, head of finance, head of engineering, head of product. You could easily see multiple functions actually have either an advanced engineering degree or certainly an MBA, right? If you're talking about either maybe a CMO or a head of finance, there's likely a few of the people on the executive management team that would have an advanced degree. As it relates to investors, I'm not sure there's a common path. I mean, either somebody gets into investing from the finance world in general, and usually those people probably do have an advanced business degree, or they have been successful entrepreneurs inside of early stage businesses that had a successful exit. And so it's not required, but I think for certain functions, it's probably safe to say that most of the people do have them.
Has there been something specific about, obviously you've worked with a bunch of companies and a lot of executives. Have there been any key traits that these executives have held who have been successful, and in other traits that have led others to fail?
Well, maybe I'll just answer that question, which is understanding that, again, looking at companies in Silicon Valley or what people would consider early stage technology companies, that the whole idea is basically to build something from scratch and disrupt an industry, right? And so generally that takes, the idea of building something from scratch takes grit. It takes being really comfortable with ambiguity. It takes optimism that you're ultimately going to be able to get, achieve the goal. It definitely takes collaboration and teamwork. And probably it also takes an idea of trying to challenge the norms of a particular industry, right? So having a bit of vision about how an industry could work better, or how a piece of technology could work better. And so, just being disruptive at some level and questioning why an industry is a certain way or a product is a certain way are pretty, being able to ask those questions about how things can be done better are pretty good traits.
And thank you for that. So given what you've learned along the way, could you share some advice as to how to best prepare for entry points into early stage ventures?
I'm not sure there are any. What I would say is, people coming out of college, there's going to be this decision do I go join a larger, more entrenched business, maybe that has a lot of history, or do I go, go work for a startup company that's trying to build something? You know, my advice would be the only way you get experience in a startup business is actually go work for an early stage business and experience what that journey's like. I'm not sure that there's besides maybe if you are if you work inside of an industry and that how that industry, all the ins and outs and the implications and the way that industry ultimately the processes work, you may be better served to figure out how to disrupt that industry. But I think by and large, people learn to build companies by doing it and not necessarily studying it.
And so when you're hiring, what sticks out? So if you're, I don't know, take me for example, or any other college student coming out of Middlebury, Vermont, what would say like this really sticks out like about this candidate? What are you looking for?
So if I was interviewing somebody coming out of college, I'd want to know their narrative, right? Who are you? Where did you come from? What are your interests? Have you dedicated yourself to the pursuits of those interests? What did you do when you got knocked down in the pursuit of those interests, right? So I think in general, hiring inside of early stage businesses, generally people are looking for a lot of the same attributes, which is intelligence, grit, determination, a sense of collaboration, and somebody that frankly wants to try to get ahead. And so they're not too dissimilar in terms of when people are getting hired out of college. I think to some extent it's being able to know who you are, have an understanding of where you came from, asking questions, being inquisitive, right? All those are great traits.
Right. And so do you think that there are any specific experiences that like a college student could acquire that lend themselves specifically to an early stage venture environment to help us get prepared?
Yeah. I would say you could certainly try to work inside of an early stage business, for maybe a summer. There's some amazing companies being built all over the country, right? So it used to be more primarily in Boston and San Francisco, but I think you can find great technology companies being built all over the place. So maybe go experience what that's like. Alternatively, you may have started a paper route, or you may have started your own business on campus, or the act of actually starting something from scratch, whether it's an organization or a business or a team, getting people together, aligning around a common goal, and then manifesting that is important. So if you don't have an experience, or you don't have an opportunity to work inside of an early stage business or a venture funded company, I think the idea of building something, whatever that might be, is a pretty good attribute.
Right. Yeah, that's something that's super interesting, and I'm grateful for having you here, like a student who's interested in pursuing a career in finance and even possibly stepping into the world of venture capital. It's been super awesome getting your perspective, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Lucas. Happy to be here again.
Yeah, so this concludes the episode within the series Exploring Careers in Innovation. In closing, I want to encourage all viewers to tune in to get career perspectives and advice from a number of professionals in a broad variety of organizations in our other episodes in this series. I also want to encourage you to tune in to other MIDDVantage series, which can be accessed through the Events and Programs tab on the CCI website. On behalf of MIDDVantage, I want to thank you all for joining us. This is Lucas Cappelletti, and have a great day.